Hello and welcome to Trust Your Glitter podcast. This is Christy and I am here with the astrology from June 9th to the 16th of 2024. And this week with astrology, I'm very much going to broad stroke it. I'm going to look at the very, very important aspects of the week. Just because I think if I get into the very detailed aspects, it's already gonna be a week of, I'm gonna call, like, if I were gonna give this week a title, it would be something like continued investigation. So last week we had this beautiful new moon energy. I was kind of viewing it from like rose-colored glasses perspective, which is like, oh my gosh, we're having a Venus Sun Cazimi and it's like all love and rainbows and hearts and flowers, and there's a square to Saturn that was going on. And the way I was viewing it is a couple of different things. I saw the square to Saturn as like rewards given for past good deeds. The way that I should also have looked at this is from a perspective of, say everybody is on a different point in their Saturn journey, because we're going to continue this, and from new moon to new moon, I'm focusing on lunar manifestation. So I'm going from last week's new moon to the new moon in July. So in between, I'm looking at this as one big turning of the wheel. So if I were to embody this in a tarot card, I would say the Wheel of Fortune. So the way I kind of view last week's new moon is like it's an entirety of the major arcana card of the wheel turn. In order for those spokes to turn, I also have to look at this week as the rose-colored glasses are like there, but they're an accessory. So I need to kind of look at that as we still have them, but we also have a lot of deep work to do this week. So even though the piece of me that is like fire, the fire sign was out last week, and now this week I'm looking at this from all this. I have a very Capricorn Saturn chart. So this week is one of those weeks for all of us to get down in the grit a little bit. And nobody, karma does not escape any of us on this planet. Like, we all have assignments. We all have these things that we came here to do. We all have these things that we have to realize. It's one of those weeks where we may have information coming to us. And the way that I look at this week is like, sometimes it's just your personal declaration. So I was thinking this morning, because I've been journaling this out, and I was thinking this morning about last night. We had Mars ingress, so we had Mars enter into his transit through the sign of Taurus. So 12:35 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9:35 p.m. Pacific Time, Mars entered the sign of Taurus. So pretty much a good part of the day on June the 8th, we were in this very pure form of Mars energy at the anaretic final degree of Aries. And it could have ignited the pilot light in a different way. So the pilot light could have just gotten a burst. And for a lot of people, that could be a burst of anger, rage, energy, whatever, however one could feel. And that's solar plexus energy. So it's like, solar plexus is our self-esteem. And so for a lot of us, this could be like a battle with your own self-container. And because there's so much energy flying around in the sign of Gemini, I think that this week is going to kind of force a lot of us to have to sit in some uncomfortable energy. And it could have a restlessness to it. But when Mars entered the sign of Taurus, we are now so Taurus is a fixed sign. There's a square to Pluto that is closing, that is finding its way to a perfect square. So a square is a 90-degree angle. And that actually doesn't happen officially by degree until June the 11th. So that square will not be a perfect square at 1 degree Taurus, between Mars 1 degree Taurus and Pluto 1 degree Aquarius, and Pluto is retrograde. But we are feeling that energy. And that is the influence of the week's tone. And that's why investigation is kind of like the word of the week. Whether you're investigating yourself, investigating something that's ongoing in your life, there is some sort of deep investigative energy going forward. There is a forward motion here. And so when I look at this, I also want to reflect on the aspects of the week, and I'm only looking at the major aspects. I'm not going to look at things like semi-sextiles or semi-squares, because it's enough. It's almost like we have so many details in our investigation. I just want to look at the core details. So the core details here are, so I'm looking at this from Sunday, just to kind of say the influence of, there is a Sun solar energy square Saturn and Mercury sextile the North Node on the 9th. So I'm just going to acknowledge that because I know that I record every Sunday and set up our week ahead. And I think that this energy does set up our week ahead. It does give us this sort of like, it's not that it's a blocked energy. It's what do you have to, there is a fight. What do you have to fight through? What do you have to push past? And that is going to be happening a lot this week. And a lot of us, I will say this just because Pluto is retrograde, and it's the nature of the square of Mars-Pluto, are pushing past our past. That new moon last week gave us a glimpse of the future. And I know that the new moon was square Saturn, so there's like a not yet factor. But there was a win last week. And the way I'm looking at the win, just based on personal experience and, from people who are telling me like their experiences, a lot of the wins are just recognizing where you came from, what kind of abusive power dynamics were not correct. And the reason why I bring that up is because Saturn is authority. And also, Pluto is power structures. So that is my hands are up over my head. I am pumping to the sky. That is the theme of the week. What was your experience with power structures in your life? I know I say this so much, but we are going through, this is literally the thing we are going through with society right now. This is the thing. You know how you meet people and you have a friend and they always date the same guy? This is the thing. This is the thing. Or you, say you like the person, you're like, oh my God, I'm dating this person. They're a new person. And 6 months later, you're like, oh my fucking God, how did I meet the same motherfucker in a different body? Power structures, power dynamics, outer planetary positions. So let's just talk about that, because astrology is such a beautiful tool of uncovering. And this week, I think I want my rose-colored glasses are like, say I have like a nice little clip and a cute little shirt. It's like clipped onto my shirt. So I'm like right there with my rose-colored glasses, like ready to put on at any moment, okay? But we have to go through the trenches part of this week. So I want to reiterate, it's not a dates week, meaning like on this date, this thing's going to happen. It's a theme week. We're going into a theme party ahead. As we open the door to the week ahead, we are in the trenches of Pluto and Mars. I don't give a fuck what anybody says about this week. Yes, there's going to be some nice stuff at the end of the week. Pluto and Mars got us through this, okay? And with Pluto square Mars on the 11th, specifically, what we're feeling this week is like that gnawing at our soul. And yes, it is related to like that new moon opened up something in our brain in Gemini. Because Venus was involved, and that's the part of this week that's really rose-colored glasses, right? Because the Sun in Gemini and Venus are very close to one another, even though they met in the sky last week. They're still influencing each other. So there's still like this chatty social media, like things going viral effect. But it takes a bit of a deep, dark, like turn this week. It takes a bit of like, we've really got to confront this. There's a very like, that's another word of the week is confronting. And with Mars and Pluto square, I will tell you, it can be one of the most rewarding energies if you have this in your natal chart, and it can be a monster. And a lot of times when you see people with a Mars square Pluto natally, they had to literally rise out of hell in a way that not many, like, I would say some of the hardest parts of natal charts is seeing squares to Pluto and conjunctions to Pluto. Oppositions to Pluto can go either or, because it's like watching a magnet try to move. It is a power like dynamic. But the opposition, in my observation of it, gives a little bit of a distance, like energetic distance. A conjunction to Pluto and a square to Pluto in a natal chart is an assignment that is karmic, an assignment that requires you to meet your demons, see your shadow, and to constantly have to rebirth yourself. So when I see like a planet like Mars square to Pluto, we had a Venus square to Pluto already, but this one, Mars square Pluto, acts differently. It's finna act different as we go through this week. It is war. It could be a war within ourselves, a war within our lives. I'm picking like this, I'm seeing a storyline, so I'm just going to say it out loud, which is like, sometimes we are our parents' parent. I need to put that out there because a lot of times when we rise through hell, our hell is where we literally were born out of. And if you're somebody who's listening to this where you are in a parentified position, a Mars square Pluto is a very nasty past position. And the way I say past is because Pluto is still making Pluto's way towards Capricorn for one more time in that sign. So we are all reviewing this. And by the way, Pluto can be the governments that we are contracted under. So there's a lot of truth to power that's going on this week. And with all of this Mercury influence in the sky with planets in Gemini. We have Mercury in Gemini, we have Venus in Gemini, we have the Sun in Gemini, we have Jupiter in Gemini. With all of this chatty, information sharing energy in the sky, things that have been stuffed down about power influencers. This could be on a global stage or even like influencers online. Some stuff coming to surface, coming to light, information coming out into the world. You know, say an influencer has some sort of opinion that's real fucked up. That shit's gonna come out to light. You know, say a leader of a country has some shit that's going on with them that's been hidden. That shit's gonna come out to light. The other thing with this Mars square Pluto that I wanna also say is it could be celestial events, because Mars in the earthy sign of Taurus represents kind of this embodied earth. And then events in the sky. So we might have more like meteor shower, or just like random meteors, unplanned sort of things. Also Taurus, Uranus is still in Taurus, so it's kind of that chaos energy, although Mars and Uranus are going to meet down the road. This square right now is kind of those paranormal, investigative, extraterrestrials, because Pluto is in Aquarius. That's kind of all part of this whole thing, you know, time and space, things that in this realm don't make any sense. So we might have some like more UAP stuff maybe surface its way out, or a video, or just looking towards the sky and having more sky events. And there's so much with Mars square Pluto, and it really is kind of the thing this week. We do have, let me just make sure, we have Mercury square Saturn on the 12th, Mercury and Gemini square Saturn. That is, again, where I had my rose-colored glasses on last week. There is, again, I kind of see this as you're trying to fight for yourself, but you're not being heard by power structures. So if I were to see somebody with this natally, I would say something like, hey, how did people hear you when you were younger? And a lot of times somebody would be like, they couldn't hear me. I was screaming loudly. I was showing them, the truth. Here's the evidence right here. Here's the truth. And there was something about them. Like I couldn't see the download in their brain. I was speaking to them. That is what this influence is with Mercury square to Saturn. Another part of this is that the sun is sextile to Chiron. We also have Mercury sextile to Chiron. So here's the thing about self-investigation this week. So let's, on a broader scale, sometimes you just have to walk away and know that you did everything in your power to show that power source what you were about. That's not your audience anymore. That's not your people anymore. But where is your community? And that's something that Pluto is trying to point out, and that is a longer term transit. But this week, and here's where it gets like, okay. June the 14th, we have a conjunction between the Sun and Mercury. And I think that the way I'll interpret this, there's so many, different tarot card readers out there, astrologers, intuitives. But the way that I see that is like, literally we go through the trenches of hell. We go through kind of this like imbalance of power this week, or this recognition of this imbalance of power. And at the end of the week, there is a truth surfacing with this Sun conjunct Mercury in Gemini. And the truth might just be you being like, fuck it. Fuck it. I have analyzed this from every angle, and every angle that I've analyzed this, for as long as I've been analyzing this, I'm realizing this other motherfucker is a piece of shit. Or this situation is abusive. Or I need to go a different way. And that's the thing. That new moon in Gemini last week was showing us something, showing us that there's a new way. And we close this week with a nice, beautiful first quarter moon in Virgo. The first quarter moon in Virgo is showing us something about the details that were maybe glossed over because we had our rose-colored glasses on. But the details, the information's there. You can see it. It's tangible. And the first quarter moon is letting us know, next week we're going to have a full moon. You might have to release some tension around this. You might have to release some anger around this. But it's going to be constructive. Because next week we're getting ready for a change of astrological season. We are going into the solstice next week. And the full moon next week is lined up with that solstice energy. And it's going to be holding us. So I'll get more into that next week. It's going to be an earthy full moon. So in order to prepare for this week we have to face some tension. I actually love it. It's really hard work. It's really big lessons. And it's honoring the fact that we've been doing this. And the other thing is, Mars transits a sign about every 1.5 to 2 years, depending on whether or not Mars goes retrograde. Mars goes retrograde about every 26 months. So depending on the retrograde cycle, dictates where Mars is, when we have a Mars return, for example. And so Mars was last in the sign of Taurus from July the 5th to August 20th in 2022. So we have not seen this type of energy yet with Mars because Pluto had not yet entered the sign of Aquarius. So this is kind of a first glimpse of something this week. This is our first oh wow, I didn't recognize that before this week. And I think that it's really nice that this week gives us so much information. It's a lot of information, but it's very empowering. And we head into the weekend. It's like we get the trenches and then we get a little bit of a relief, a little bit of a respite. And then on the 16th, we're going to have Venus square Neptune. So Venus square Neptune can be idealistic. So the rose-colored glasses do kind of come out after that Sun-Mercury conjunction. But it's almost like the universe gave us, if we're thinking about a song, it's in its heaviest period this week. It's okay, it's a tough one, but we're doing it. So I think we've got some really amazing things on the way. I definitely love it when people tell me, how you experience the energy in the planets. So just know that this week ahead is full of tests and trials, but that might just be even trials with your own mindset and shifting what you think and say about yourself and continuing the process of last week's new moon forward. So it is a beautiful energy space to work in. There's a ton of homework to do, but we are here for it. We are here to live our destiny, and I hope you have an amazing week ahead. My name is Christy. You can find me on all social media, Christy Belich, Trust Your Glitter, and thank you so much for listening.